And again, I think, when we talk about feminism, it's not about women asserting their agency to the detriment of men. It's for the benefit of society. I mean, it's women are being able to engage, and it's a matter of justice. And particularly in a society like India, it boils down to an issue of justice and equality and fairness. And it's very hard because it's difficult to compare a country like India to Sweden or even the United States because of its diversity and because of all of the issues. It's a very complex country at so many levels, and the changes that are going to happen will happen slowly, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains and birthing pains and all of that before we emerge at a level where we can say we are an equal society, because there's inequalities at many, 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 many levels, at levels that most other societies never had to face.
I mean, in that way, I think India, in a sense, is an incubator because, you have that plurality that exists nowhere else. So when you talk about a concept like justice, or even when you ask, what is equality, the answers that you're going to get from within India, forget about the outside, from within India are going to be rich because your society is by definition a very vibrant and a very diverse one. So I would think that it would almost be a distraction, whether it's an Obama or some European leader or whoever it is, it would almost be a distraction to really be concerned about what that person defines as feminism or equality or anything else, because organically what matters for India is what's being experienced within India. And that should be, I believe, an organic starting point. The rest is noise. It's distraction.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. I think that's where India's, if we get that right, that'll be perfect. If we stick to our own roots, then borrow or adopt, rely on a foreign, I think it's better, my opinion. Thank you.
Please.
I was just going to quickly say, just going back to one point you made, on the aspect of, how when Trump's election happened, feminism, but most women voted for Trump, and this is where even in this country, when you look at feminism, that was, someone could correct me, but last time I checked, that was white women who mostly voted for Trump. That was not any woman that looked like me, because this is where intersectionality comes back into it. It's recognizing, for example, we have same-sex marriage, but on the opposite side, 60 to 70% of homeless LGBTQA plus youth are Black and Latino. And, we're still on level 5 on the white aspect of being, LGBTQA, but people that look like me still can't get proper health care. They still can't get proper homes. So it's kind of even in that aspect of here, and that's why I don't want it to seem they're pushing the feminist agenda, because even if you look at it here, there are a lot of different ways you define it, and a lot of people are still at different paces. We say, women make 75% off the man's dollar. What women? Because I'm a Black woman, I make less than 75%. Yeah, Latina women make less than 75%. And I feel like that's also something to remember when it comes to feminism, and to thinking of, what type of feminism are you talking about? Because I'm not gonna lie and say trust me, I am a feminist, but I also am keen to remember okay, yes, we have, for example, like I said, same-sex marriage, but most of these homeless, youth and, kids who have HIV or who are, on drugs and all these things, who are battling within this community, are Black and Latino, and they still can't get the support that they need. So I feel like that's also something to remember when you think about feminism. It's kind of there are really, there are a lot of different, not to say types of it, but it's you have to keep in mind what we're being spoken about. What we spoke about last class is, I feel now we're getting to a point where we're trying to be more inclusive of it. I feel a lot of these movements are coming together and recognizing hey, we're talking about this issue, but you're not, with us. So I feel we are starting to recognize that we all have to be in the conversation together. But I feel in the last few years, it was kind of just I would see something happen, I was okay, well, you're not talking about me. So that's also just something I wanted to say, because, kind of listen to the numbers that you were giving. It's well, that was not a good representation of what it was to be a feminist. So that's just something I wanted to say.
While elites might have ideas and might want to introduce or indoctrinate in certain ways. You always still have to have, if you're speaking culturally and attitudinally, a societal, shall we say, contribution. It's not just about what elites want. It's about what people are willing to invest themselves in as communities. Whether it's a rural community or an urban community, the bottom line is it's a community, and community matters. That's what I think India has to teach the world, in a sense. Because India ultimately is your example of an incubator of communities that are so diverse that it is beyond the imagination. I mean, I've never been to India, but I cannot imagine the diversity that makes that country live. It's almost unfathomable. But that is what we have to dare to imagine in our world. Because to make our world one, we must embrace that diversity. And that, as you know, is a very, very difficult thing to do. Because it's frightening for some people to embrace that kind of diversity. They're afraid of it. And that's the challenge, in a sense, that we face. I mean, diplomacy matters because diplomacy is about people. I mean, it's not just about, the UN and these conversations that are in the echo chambers of rooms. Diplomacy is about people. And if you invest in people, you make community. And that matters. Okay? And I think there's a place for that when you talk about a feminist policy, because what we're coming back to is that it's about equality. It's about how men and women invest together. It's not one or the other. It's not an either-or proposition. It's a mutual investment.